Hey guys, welcome to our third and final video. Like I was saying, when we do some extra research, we actually find out that the character in question in the novel, who apparently, has so much money, does in fact have money when you analyze the difference between pounds and dollars and the difference from that time period, which was the 19th century, to the 21st century. Now, something else that's really cool is that Mr. Bingley makes about 4,000 to 5,000 a year, but then there's another man, Mr. Darcy, who makes 10,000 a year. I mean, I can't do the math, but if we double all these numbers, we will have a clear indication of why Mr. Darcy was such an eligible bachelor at that time. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you are going to come across a whole lot of allusions as you read these stories and as you read these poems. Sometimes these allusions will be references to biblical characters or events. It'll be references to historical events or people. So, if you don't know a certain date or if you don't know a certain reference to an event, then look it up. It's so much easier for you today with your access to technology than it used to be. So please don't wait for me to fill in that gap. Look it up yourself and inform yourself. That is how you become a strong critical reader. All right, so the next step to being a strong critical reader is evaluating the evidence before you, and in doing so, disregarding claims that appear to be bogus or unlikely. So when it comes to nonfiction, my main advice is to cross-check sources. So for example, if one scientist happens to proclaim that, I don't know, coffee is bad for us, don't just take that person's word for it, and don't just take their study as the study that beats all studies. You should find other sources that say the same thing. So I put over here, check the date of the evidence. Keep in mind that studies are being conducted all the time. And of course, if the study is a little bit outdated, they might not have the most current information. And, use common sense. If you see on the news that Bigfoot is on the loose, then I don't know if I would believe that. I would have to have some really strong evidence in favor of Bigfoot. So I put over here, be skeptical of unsubstantiated statements that aren't accompanied by evidence. Unfortunately, the news does this all the time. They claim, they're like, studies show or experts say, but then they don't really identify who these experts are. So don't believe everything you hear or see on the news, because a lot of times it's very sensationalized and they are trying to get viewers. So in fiction, it's a little bit different. So what I'm trying to say is this. Sometimes, and this is a reality, sometimes when we're reading, let's say, a novel from the past, and the author is dead, so it's not like we can go and be like, excuse me, Jane Austen, what did you mean when you were saying this? We can't do that. So what literary scholars do is they have conversations with one another. But sometimes these conversations lead to claims that are simply just speculative claims, and they are not backed by any evidence. And that's what I want you to look out for. Sometimes these literary scholars are just trying to get published, so they're trying to do something current and new, and as a result, they kind of butcher the authenticity of that work. And so I wanted to give you guys an example. I was reading some feminist literature that was claiming that Charlotte Lucas in Pride and Prejudice is a lesbian. Not even just like, oh, maybe a lesbian, but like, oh, she's a closeted lesbian. And I was like, what? And so I read Pride and Prejudice again. I mean, I do that for fun anyway. So here's the fact. Charlotte does call herself unromantic, and she primarily calls herself unromantic in regards to marriage because she believes in practical marriage and basically doesn't, get carried away with, sentiment. Fact, she does claim, and she has said this, that marital happiness is based entirely on chance. So your chances of being happy in marriage, it's kind of like a toss of a coin. Also fact, she chooses to marry Mr. Collins, not because she loves him, but because of the financial security he's able to provide. Also fact, after marriage, Charlotte's feelings for him do not grow. So it does say that she's rather unaffectionate. There's even a part that says that she tries to stay as far from her husband in her separate chambers as possible. And she does express this. Now, nowhere does this indicate lesbianism. So I think it's one thing to, see signs because they are clues in text, and you put these clues together and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the bigger picture. This is indicating a puzzle. But there is such a thing as reading so much into the text that you're just like making shit up. and I hate to put it like that. It's not that I'm against Charlotte Lucas being a lesbian, but there is absolutely no evidence in the text that suggests that she is. And if all this is supposed to be evidence, then I don't know what we consider lesbianism nowadays. So for step 9, I would say read literature carefully. Read literature with respect to what the author is actually writing. And don't speculate so much that you get carried away by the fact that there might not be any evidence to support some of your claims. Finally, step 10. Now, these characters that the writers create, they're very flawed. And a lot of times, human beings, when they are flawed, you're going to see that in their speech. So logical fallacies are basically flaws in logic that appear when people are trying to make arguments. So your job, really as a critical reader, is to be able to see some of these fallacies. Now, I don't have enough time because there's so many of them. I have like 18 of them just listed here of fallacies, but I put some of the main ones like ad hominem, which is attacking a person, just their character instead of their argument. I also put one that is pretty popular, which is a hasty generalization, like stereotypes are examples of these. When we see a little bit of truth in some, and then we generalize about the whole. So I wanted to give you guys 2 current examples. This is from one of my favorite commentators, Candace Owens. She's a Black conservative commentator. She's a political activist. And this is what she tweeted. She argued that Black Americans should not martyrize George Floyd. And then, of course, I'm sorry, this isn't what she tweeted. This is what Dave Chappelle said. In his recent segment, and I haven't watched it yet, but I did see the clip that he makes this comment. Dave Chappelle, in reference to Candace Owens and that argument that she was making about George Floyd, said, and I quote, "She's the worst. I can't think of a worse way to make money. She's the most articulate idiot I've ever seen in my effing life." And then, of course, he goes on and he says a few more harsh things about her. But what Dave Chappelle did is he committed an ad hominem fallacy, which is attacking a person's character instead of their argument. I wanted to also give you guys another example. I mean, how could I not? Because our president is just full of these fallacies, as are most politicians, by the way. But I do follow him on Twitter, and on June 11th, he tweeted, "The radical left Democrats, first they try to take away your guns, then they try to take away your police." And that's all that there was to the tweet. But this is an indication of actually 2 fallacies working together. It's the straw man, because he's inventing an argument and claiming that the Democrats believe this argument, but it's not necessarily what the Democrats support. And then scare tactics, as in, you should vote for me because of all of these like horrible things that might happen if you don't. And that is an argument based on a fallacy. So this is finally the completion of all 10 steps, and specifically 6 through 10. I am going to have you guys do the same thing this time for practice number 2. Now I did examples from 6 to 10, and what I would like you guys to do once again is choose 2 of them, 2 that you like the most, and let me explain each one. So for number 6, this is for looking for biases, hidden assumptions, distinct values. I put over here, if you choose 6, choose a story that was written in the past. Now, it should be at least a few decades old. Don't choose something that is current, and identify specific biases, assumptions, or values that you are able to see in the writer. And it doesn't have to be bad things, it could just be values that you see. Maybe the writer is very religious and the Christian values are coming through in the writing. You should research the writer's culture and society. 7, find an argument that you think uses too much emotion rather than logic. It can be excessive emotion that people are bringing to a certain story. So it might be how people are interpreting a certain story, and it might be a movie, it might be a short story, or it might be a current issue that you think is being discussed in an excessively emotional way. And I do want to see your explanation here because I think that's an important part of this step. Number 8, if you do number 8, find a story, a play, or a poem that alludes to a date, event, or person in the past that's unfamiliar to you. Look it up and give me the information. So this is the part where you need to do a little bit of research. Again, allusions are everywhere. It might be an allusion to a historical event, it might be a biblical event, it might be an allusion to mythology. So look it up and give us a little bit of information about it that we might not have otherwise known. Number 9, if you choose this one, find a fact that's disputed or has not yet been proven. Maybe even find a bogus fact, like you just don't see evidence supporting it. Explain it clearly, indicating why you think it's bogus. And since I already used the Bigfoot example, you cannot use that one. Go ahead and find your own, and make sure you're very clear in your explanation of why you think this this truth, and I'm putting quotes around it that you can't see, is bogus. And finally, number 10, find an argument that you think contains a logical fallacy. Now, I understand that you might not know the name of the fallacy, but if you describe it, I will understand the logical mistake you think the person is using. So as long as you describe it, I'm okay with it. You don't have to have the technical terminology to back it up. So this can be, honestly, go search Twitter. You will find so many. Or it could be an argument in like an essay, or it could be just overall, it could be like a character's speech in a story. Because again, characters have certain personalities and they have flaws in their logic as well. So the way that a character speaks might actually show a certain fallacy coming through. And one more time, you guys, you are doing 2 of these as examples. So you're going to be writing practice 1, doing 2 practices underneath that one, and then practice 2, doing 2 practices underneath that one, a total of 4 examples that you are going to be doing and demonstrating. And there is a discussion component to this assignment, which I will explain a little bit more in our discussion forum. But that's it, you guys. This was our workshop on critical reading. I really hope it was helpful. Feel free to give me any feedback at all, like what you thought about it. And, if you have any current examples, feel free to share. But for the rest of the instructions for this workshop, please consult our discussion forum. Thanks, and have a great day, everyone.